Next test we're going to do is a AC ripple test on the alternator. And the reason we do an AC ripple test is to see if the diodes inside the alternator are starting to fail. Remember in the chapter, if you've watched the chapter lecture and read the chapter, it talks about the alternator producing alternating current. And then diodes rectify that alternating current into direct current. And so one way to test to see if we've got good diodes is to see how much alternating current is actually coming out of the alternator. You should have about less than 4 volts AC or less coming out of, or sorry, 4 amps AC or less coming out of the alternator for AC ripple. And so we're going to test that. We're going to be using the amp clamp again, and only this time what we're going to do is we're going to set the amp clamp to AC amperage, which is the A with the little squiggly line above it. So that's AC amps. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the amp clamp. We're going to clip it around the output of the alternator. And I've got it set to AC amps, and we're going to turn on the vehicle and we'll see how many amps are coming out in AC. Okay, so I've got the amp clamp around the alternator output wire. I've got it on amps AC, and I've got 2 amps bouncing between 2 and 4 amps, 2 and 3 amps, 2 3.9, 3.8, something like that. I'm going to raise the RPMs up to about 2,000 RPMs and make sure that doesn't change. So it actually decreased. It went down to like 1.9 amps, which is good. Okay, so that's how you check to see if you've got AC ripple coming out of there. Now if you have bad diodes in the alternator, you may see a lot more voltage right there, or amperage, I'm sorry. You may see a lot more amperage than that. So the acceptable amperage, like I said, is 4 amps. Now let's check for voltage. So checking for AC ripple with your voltage, you're going to do basically the same thing. Now, if you remember from the chapter, it talks about you can go right across the battery. So I've got my meter set at volts AC, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to touch the positive post and the negative post with my battery, or with my meter leads, and we'll see how much AC voltage is coming out of the alternator. We've got 0.019, it looks like, so 0.02 volts. Now the book did say, and I agree with the book, that a more accurate way to do this would be to test it right at the alternator instead of at the battery, because then you don't have the battery wires and all that kind of thing influencing it. So let's check it right from the back of the alternator. I'm going to show you where I'm hooking up right here. So on the back side of the alternator, there is a output bolt right there. So that's the bolt right there that is going to, that's the output post of the alternator. So what I did is I pulled the rubber insulator off of there that usually protects it. So that way I can get my meter lead on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch that, and I'm going to touch the battery negative cable to measure the alternator AC output. And we're reading 0.03. Now if you remember when we were reading it right at the battery, there's a 0.02. So I did pick up a little bit of AC ripple going straight from the alternator. Oh, now it's 0.001 from the alternator, or from the battery. And if I look at it over here, it's 0.03. So you can see how it is a little bit more accurate to go ahead and read it straight from the alternator. So that's checking for AC ripple. We checked for both AC ripple voltage, and we also check for AC ripple amperage.